Assalamu alaikum listeners. I welcome you all on the behalf of Experience Exchange with this brand new episode in which we have another very interesting and important topic to discuss, which is capitalism. In this whole video we will discuss about that what actually capitalism is and what are the pros and the cons of capitalism. Capitalism is defined as an economic system in which a country's trade, industry, and profits are controlled by private companies instead of people whose time and labor powers those companies. The United States and many other nations around the world are capitalist countries. But capitalism is not the economic system only available in these worlds. Gen Z and millennials say that they have grown increasingly with capitalism. But it's most important to explore what capitalism actually involves and the arguments for and against it so you can make your own decision about the worlds you would like to live in. The first question which actually arises in our mind is that where did capitalism come from? Let's look in the history of capitalism. The origin of capitalism are complicated and stretch back to 16th century when the British systems of power largely collapsed after the Black Death. Now what Black Death is? A deadly plague that killed off 60% of Europe's entire population. A newly formed class of merchants began to trade with foreign countries, and this newfound demand for the exports hurt the logical economies and began to dictate overall production and pricing. It also led to the spread of colonialism, slavery, and imperialism. The death of feudalism, a hierarchical system often seen as oppressive that kept poor people bonded to their master's land, which they farmed in exchange for the place to live and military protection, also left rural British peasants with no homes and no work, which eventually funneled them away to had sell their labor in newly competitive work environment in order to a maximum wage and clamp down on beggars.
Capitalism began in 17th
By
century
the
Europe
18th
during a
century,
time when
England
colonial powers
had
were being
converted
harmed.
into an
England and
industrial
Portugal
nation,
had taken
and the
control of
dawn of the
84%
Industrial
of the
Revolution
world. By
saw
the 20th
an
century, the
explosion
idea had
of
spread to
manufacturing
most of the
overtake the
globe, often
island.
with detours and
It is
violent
within
sizable
those smoky
upheavals along the
factories
way.
and
The
flammable
Italian was
textile
restored
mills
communist
that our
country
modern
instead
idea
of
of
state capitalism.
capitalism
This
and the
forced
opposition
private
to it
enterprises
began to
in
fully
large.
flourish. In 1776, Scottish economist Adam Smith published his treatise, an inquiry into the nature and causes of the wealth of nation. The name of treatise, which is regarded as the bedrock upon which the modern capitalism stands. Though some of his specific ideas about the value and labor differ from those modern economists, Smith is often called the father of capitalism. So who is the father of capitalism? The Adam Smith is called the father of capitalism. Now the second question which arises in our mind is what does it mean to be capitalist? Individual capitalists are typically wealthy people who have a large amount of capital, money or other financial assets invested in business and who benefit from the system of capitalism by making increased profits and thereby adding to their wealth. A capitalist nation is dominated by the free market, which is an economic system in which both prices and production are dictated by the cooperation and private companies in competition with another, and place a heavy focus on private property, economic growth, freedom of choice, and limited government intervention. Generally, those to the right of political spectrum tend to be pro-capitalist, those on the left veer towards anti-capitalism. So the next question which arises in our mind is how does capitalism impact people? The kind of impact that capitalism has on your life depends on whether you are a worker or a boss. For someone who owns a company and employs other workers, capitalism may make sense. The more profit your company brings in, the more resources you have to share with your workers, which theoretically improves everyone's standard of living. It is all based on principle of supply and demand. And in capitalism, consumption is a king. The problem is that many capitalism bosses aren't great at sharing the wealth, which is why one of the major critics of capitalism is that it is a huge driver of inequality, both social and economic. Now we will talk about the basic principle of capitalism. The basic principle of capitalism is actually acquire or get acquired. What is it? Acquire or get acquired. Capitalism takes the position that greed is good, which its supporters say is a positive thing. Greed drives profits and profit drives innovation and the product development, which means there are more choices available for those who can afford them. Its opponent says that capitalism is by nature exploitative and leads to brutality, divided society that tramples the working class in favor of fattening the rich wallets. The Occupy Wall Street movement, for example, began as an anti-capitalist protest against 1% the richest of the rich of the capital class and asked why they are allowed to grow far and happy while 20% of all American child live in poverty. Now the next question which arises in our minds is why do people support capitalism? Capitalism supporters believe in several key points. Economic freedom leads to political freedom and having a state-owned mean of production can lead to feudal overreach. They view it as the only sensible way to organize a society, insisting that alternatives like socialism, communism, or anarchism are doomed to fail. As former British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, who is pro-capitalist and the stance is said to have devastated the British working class, once put it, there is no alternative. When asked to consider capitalism's negative impact on the environment and our shrinking natural resources, many says that those resources will only become more valuable and able to generate more capital as they continue to diminish. They also believe that competition between companies benefit consumer by making products more affordable, and the capitalism's dog eat dog atmosphere encourages people to work harder to achieve their dreams. They are likely to dismiss anti-capitalist concerns about inequality and oppression by saying that rich people are rich because they are more productive and their poorer counterparts. Central importance on the individual rather than collective is classic hallmark of capitalism and is the heart of the pull yourself up by your bootstraps narrative that capitalists find so compelling. Now the next question which arises in our mind is why do people oppose capitalism? Anti-capitalists view capitalism as inhuman, anti-democratic, unsustainable, deeply exploitative system that must be dismantled. They see it as inherently at odds with democracy because of how capitalist bosses hold power over workers in the workplace and the fact that more the capital one gather, the more the power they have. As German communist philosopher and economist Karl Marx, perhaps the most famous opponent of capitalism in the history, who ironically enough helped to polarize them, the term wrote in his book. He says in his book, just as the man is governed in religion by the products of his own brain, so in the capitalist production he is governed by the product of his own hand. The essential anti-capitalist argument is that the hallmark of capitalism is poverty in the midst of plenty. They say the immense suffering and violence that have forced upon the laboring classes. So Marx also emphasized on the system's capacity to dehumanize workers, writing that capitalist method of productivity, what is that method, is mutate the laborer into a fragment of man, degrade him to the level of appendage of machine, destroy every remnant of charm in his work, and turn into a hated toy. As the looming threat of automation and erosion of public health care put more pressure on the working class, its opponents worry that capitalism's thirst for the profit over everything else means that those who sell their labor will be worked to death. I hope that you find this video very useful and you will be able to clarify that what actually capitalism is and what are the pros and cons of capitalism and what are the viewpoints of different philosophers and the historians about the capitalism and how it work in future and what are the pros and disadvantages of this whole system is. Don't forget to subscribe our channel for incoming videos like this, and up till next time, stay updated and take care of yourself. That's all from Experience Exchange for today. Meet you very soon in the next video. Assalamu alaikum.